Hello everyone, I'm bringing you a video today looking at the evolution of British 1958 pattern ammunition pouches. Now these are of course a key part of the equipment, and the entire set of equipment sort of evolved somewhat, certainly in details, throughout its production life, mainly during the 1960s, and obviously we'll talk about that during the course of the video. It was in production for a very long time, over 30 years, and as I say, during that time various components morphed somewhat to simplify manufacture and also to improve their function a little bit as well. So that's what we're going to have a look at in this video, is the evolution of the ammunition pouches for the equipment. So here we have a quick overview looking at the various pouches we're going to talk about. Top left here we have the first issue pouches, second issue to the right of those, then in the bottom row here we have third issue and fourth issue. And through third issue there are various common features. You have the Energa pouch on the side of the right hand pouch, we'll talk a bit more about that in just a minute, and then on the left hand pouch you have the loops for the bayonet. These are deleted on the fourth issue, which is an interesting step at that stage, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. We're going to look at all of these pairs of pouches separately as well. Basically, you have a simplification through the 1960s and a slight improvement in the function of these, in that you have stiffened lids in the first issue, which are then simplified, they're removed, with simpler sides to the lids or flaps on the second issue. And then with the third issue, the actual size is increased, and there's a further simplification in that you have a strap inside, which we'll see in a minute, in the first and second issue, which is removed. And then you have a further simplification of the design with the fourth issue, which comes very late on, with the external fittings for the carriage of a bayonet and the Energa pouch removed from the outside of the pouches. So that's basically the story of this, is improving the load carrying capacity, moving through the 60s to the third issue, and at the same time simplification of the design. And we'll have a look at that in a bit more detail now, looking at these pairs of pouches individually. So we have the pair of first issue pouches here, and these are what was initially issued with 1958 pattern when it went into large scale production and large scale issue. And they are deep enough to hold two 20 round magazines for the SLR, or two 30 round magazines for the L4 light machine gun. And that's why they're so tall, of course. They wouldn't need to be this tall if they were just intended to carry the 20 round magazines for the SLR, but they're also intended to carry the 30 round magazines, as I say, for the L4. The major distinguishing feature of these compared to the second issue, which we'll look at in a minute, are the stiffening pieces in each side of the lid. You can actually see here there's a bit of a repair there. You can see it's a red fiberboard in there, similar to the material that was used to stiffen hot food carriers, and also used for making ID discs as well, of course. So that's the major feature that marks these out from the simplified version we'll be looking at in just a moment. These both fasten with a quick release, as you can see, quick release there, and they have a feature, an interesting feature internally, which is a strap which could be shortened off using this buckle in the flap here. And this would mean if you're just carrying 20 round magazines, you can sit those in there with the strap shortened down, and they're a convenient height for reaching easily and withdrawing easily in there. If you needed to carry 30 round magazines for the L4, you'd loosen this right off and they just sit in there neatly. You see we have a fixed loop there for the quick release on the front, and this is a somewhat larger quick release when compared to preceding designs, the later versions of 1937 pattern basic pouch and the 1944 pattern equipment which had gone before, and they're quite a bit easier to manipulate because of being that bit chunkier. And you can see there, well, a little bit difficult to do looking through the camera, but they are relatively easy to use, though I'm making a bit of a ham-fisted job of it here. You can just see here on this one there's a little bit of a stitching come away here. You can see there's some rust there. There's a thin piece of spring steel inside there which stiffens the tab of the quick release. A feature carried across from the 1944 pattern equipment was the carriage of the bayonet on the side of the pouch. You can see this here. There's a loop at the top here with a buttonhole in it to take the stud on the scabbard, and then a lower loop to steady the scabbard as it runs down the side of the pouch there. As I say, a feature carried across from 1944 pattern. This particular example is rather nice. You can see there's an interesting feature of some components of early 1958 pattern. There's actually a colour difference between the section of webbing used to make up the sides and the base of the pouch and the body of the pouch itself. There's a drainage eyelet in the bottom there, as you can see. These attach onto the belt using C-hooks, in common with 1944 pattern, 1937 pattern, other Mills equipment going back This is a very common feature of Mills equipment since it introduced web equipment, basically. And you can see we have a ring at the top here, which takes the strap on the yoke to support these directly. So there's a strap that loops through here and goes straight up to the yoke, which goes over the shoulders, of course. So some of the weight of the pouch is directly supported by that yoke on the shoulders. And then there's another ring on the side here. And the reason for this is for the hooks on the side of the cape carrier, as it's termed. See, latterly used to carry the poncho, often referred to as the poncho roll. And there are clips on that which clip onto this and run around the side of the hips, basically. So you have that there. On this example, the right-hand ammunition pouch, this one isn't in quite such good condition. It has had the strap cut, which is a common thing you'll see with these. You can see we still have the buckle. Sometimes these are cut out entirely, as we'll see, I think, on one of the second issue examples we're going to look at. It's not quite a mirror image, of course, because we have that ring there at the bottom on the other side, because it would be going around the other side, of course, to attach onto the cape carrier. And in place of the bayonet loops on the side, we have a pouch for carrying the Energa rifle grenade adapter, which allowed for the use of the Energa rifle grenade with the SLR. Now, this wasn't in service all that long, but as we'll see, the pouch remained part of the design basically through most of its production life, and the changes to these. This was not deleted for many, many years and was put to various other uses. The classic sort of anecdote is it being used to carry the quote-unquote racing spoon, so a spoon you could easily get at to eat rations when they were provided. Looking at the back here, you can see it's supported in exactly the same way. You've got there's no mirror. This is a mirror image, which it wouldn't be on later ones, as we'll see. There's a change to this design with the third issue, but here you've got vertical C-hooks on the back with the loop at the top there to take the strap from the yoke. No visible markings on the back of this other than the personal markings that have been written on, the number and name there. On this one, we do have a stamp which is clear enough to read, and I hope you can read that. We've got MECO there, the manufacturer, the date of 1961, and the catalogue number there as well. You can just see the government arrow here too. So quite a nice clean example, this one. This one's seen a bit more use, and as you can see has had that strap removed, unfortunately, but otherwise fairly tidy. So an example of the first issue pouches there. We'll move on now to have a look at the second issue. So the second issue pouches here differ only in that they've been somewhat simplified, and these first appear around 1962 with some other components. The water bottle pouch is introduced around 1962 as well. So the first sort of tweaking of the design occurs around 1962. As I say, these are very little changed. They're simplified in that you have simple stitched sides to the flaps or lids. You don't have that big stiffening piece around here, which is quite a big design change in terms of simplifying manufacture. It certainly makes these a lot simpler to make. This one is nice and tidy. Again, you can see, not in bad condition at all, although we're missing the marking off the back, unfortunately. You see we've got the bayonet loops on the side there. You can actually see the ink markings where these have been manufactured. Obviously, you've got markings there of where the component should be stitched onto the outside of these. This one is more heavily worn, the right-hand pouch. You can see we've got the Energa rifle grenade adapter pouch there again. But it does retain a marking on the back, even though it's more heavily worn. And as you can see here, this is again manufactured by MECO. And hopefully you can just see the date there of 1964. You can just see the 4 under the shadow of my thumb there. Sometimes just bringing a bit of shadow in, the contrast helps to see, it helps to show that the number off there. So a date stamp, which is nice to have. They're often completely worn away on these pouches. Another feature which is common with the first issue are the C-hooks on the back for attaching these to the belt, and obviously the rings at the top to support them. And these, as you can see, the C-hooks on the back are vertical again. And you again have those rings at the bottom there for securing and stabilizing the cape carrier with the clips on the side of that. If we open these up very briefly, this one has its strap intact, as you can see there. This one, I think, has had it quite neatly removed, and you can see some of the thread remaining there from where it was attached. You can also again see that ink stamp. So that's been very neatly removed, and the entire fitting's been removed from the top of the pouch rather than the strap just being cut. So quite common modification, because it's not particularly useful feature of the design, and you find a lot of these on the surplus market now, or collector's market, where the straps have been removed. So again, it's nice to have an example here where the strap is intact and still present inside the pouch. That's the second issue there, as I say, appearing around 1962. We'll move on now to have a look at the third issue. So we have a pair of third issue pouches here, and these are the pouches which were in production for by far the longest period, and they are very distinct. They're quite distinct compared to the first and second issues in that they are much deeper. And you can see this here. Normally the leading edge, the front edge of the pouch is in line with the Energa pouch, but you can see here we have another magazine's width. So they've been made deeper or wider, or deeper is the right word really. So you can carry 3 20-round magazines or 3 30-round magazines in these rather than 2. Big change to the design. Another subtle change to the design is the quick release has been improved. So the quick release is the same design, even in small details, between the first and second issue pouches. A small detail change for the third issue is that the loop for the quick release has actually been stitched top and bottom with a gap in the middle, so you can get your finger behind it, which makes this quite easy to manipulate. It improves that a little bit, particularly if you're trying to fasten the pouch wearing gloves. Having this slot here to get your finger in, quite useful. You can see that a little bit more clearly here. If I open it up, you can see that there. Another external difference, and I'm going to try and fasten this a little quicker than I managed with the other pouch. Another external difference is at the rear here, and you can see that the hooks on the back are now angled. Now the pouches hang down below the belt. You can see that the hooks are mounted high up on the pouch as they were on the first and second issue. The problem with this, I'll just move these over so they're the right sort of way around for how they would be worn on the belt. The problem with them hanging so low is that if they're round the front of the belt at all, which when typical soldiers of the period were rather slim, certainly infantrymen, pretty slim, and you end up with the belt being adjusted for the waist, and to carry everything on the belt, you've got the pouches not right round on the hips. They're somewhat to the front of the belt. And when armoured personnel carriers come in a big way, and really 1958 Pattern is kind of designed with that armoured infantryman in mind, sitting down becomes an issue because the pouches hang straight down and they interfere with your legs. Unless you've got the cape carrier on, then, which obviously pulls at the bottom edge and sort of pulls the pouches out like that, you've got a bit of a problem. So the third issue addresses this to some degree at least in having the hooks set so that when these sit on the belt, they're angled off to the side already, and that does improve things somewhat. It's certainly a worthwhile attempt at trying to make that situation a bit better and make these a bit more functional in that regard. You'll notice there's quite the difference in condition between these. This one is basically ex-stores and never been issued as far as I can see. There's no wear to it at all. A nice thing to have from that point of view. And then on the left here, this one's more heavily worn. This example is dated 1977. These first appear in 1965 or around 1965. They do appear to be shown in the 1965 fitting instructions, and certainly there are photos from the later 60s showing these in use. But this is a mid-70s or late 70s production example made by CWL, as you can see there, and we have the NATO stock number clearly stamped on this as well, and the date of 1977. This example is a very late production third issue, and this is made by MWS and it has one of their typical very large stamps on the back, very nice and clear, and this is dated 1986, I think. It's pretty late production for these pouches, for this pattern of pouches, this issue of pouches. Otherwise, the external details are basically the same. You've got that slight modification to the quick release, but you do still have an eyelet in the bottom, of course. You still have the bayonet carriage on the left-hand side, and you still have the on the left-hand pouch, and on the right-hand pouch you still have the Energa rifle grenade adapter pouch, and you still have those rings at the bottom to secure and stabilize the cape carrier. Inside, these were further simplified in that they don't have that strap. They just don't have it from new. There's no need to remove it. It was never there in the first place. So that's the third issue, and these are by far and away the most common to find. They were in production for, well, let's think what we got there, 1986, 1965. We've got over 20 years there already. So in production for by far the longest of any of these patterns we're looking at. We'll move on now to look at the fourth issue, which are a further simplified version of the design. Differ very little from these, but we will have a look at them nonetheless. So we have a pair of 4th issue pouches here, and the one on the left is pretty much in unissued condition again. The one on the right has been issued and has seen some use. And these were in production, I think, in the very late 1980s, if I remember correctly, although I don't actually have a date for that as I do with the other versions of these. But these are sort of response to the introduction of the L85, and that, of course, the bayonet couldn't be carried on the side. And by this point, the Energa rifle grenade adapter had been out of use for many years, and the pouch on the side should really probably have been removed from the design long before to simplify production. But it was finally with the 4th issue pouches, which we have here. Now these are still left and right-handed. They obviously have the loops on the bottom here for attaching the cape carrier and stabilising the cape carrier. And on the back, they still have the angled hooks, as you can see. So obviously they'd be like this if they were being worn on the belt. So in that regard, they're no different from the 3rd issue. They still have the simplified construction in not having the strap inside, of course. But they also delete the external fittings. So you don't have the bayonet loops on the left-hand pouch, and you don't have the Energa rifle grenade pouch on the side of the right-hand pouch. So further simplification in manufacture. As I say, very late production, and we can see here on the back of this one a nice clear stamp, and this actually has the contract number up the top here, which is interesting to see, and the manufacturing date there, made by OWL, and the manufacturing date of 1992, which is interesting because this is well into the period of PLCE, and PLCE was being rolled out in a big way, and of course you're actually moving on to the sort of 2nd and 3rd issues of PLCE with modified fittings, and then with the DPM finish to it as well. So the fact that 1958 pattern was still in production, quite interesting to see. Very late production. You'll see here it does also have the nomenclature pouch, ammunition right. Of course, the right-hand pouch, given the angle of the hooks and the fact that you have this loop here, and you have the NATO stock number as well. You can see that there. This one I don't believe has any clear markings on the back, unfortunately, but it has seen a fair bit of use for the amount of fading and so forth and wear that it's had. You can see the wear on the webbing here where it's been attached to the belt and so forth. So this has been issued and used, whereas this appears to be stores fresh, basically. It doesn't have any wear on it to speak of. So that's the 4th issue, the final version of these. So I hope you found it interesting looking at this. Obviously, we've looked at the 4 different versions of 1958 pattern ammunition pouches in some detail there, and we've looked at the rest of the equipment in some detail elsewhere on the channel, but I thought it was worth making a video here, taking an in-depth look at the evolution of the ammunition pouches. They're really, obviously, a key part of the equipment. Carrying ammunition is a key part of the job of a military load-carrying equipment. And also they are the component which sees the most change over time, although obviously that last change we talked about in the video very late in the service life of 1958 pattern, but nevertheless interesting. So I do hope you have found it interesting. If you have and you'd like to see more of this sort of thing, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the notification button down below, and that will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and would like to support the channel, you can. Both Patreon and PayPal are linked down below in the description. And a huge thank you, as ever, to everybody who supports the channel using those 2 methods. As I always say, it really is greatly appreciated. Thank you all very much indeed. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are all linked down below. And if you'd like to get in touch but you don't really use social media, there's of course an email address in the description as well. That's everything for this video. So until next time, bye for now.